Overnight, the whole country go mad for dinosaur fossils. This is the age that gave us the Stegosaurus, the Triceratops,
and of course the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Creatures that are up there amongst lunchbox royalty. And at the heart of this mania were two paleontologists who began their careers as friends but ends up collapsing into paleontology's pettiest rivalries in scientific history. They rush half-finished skeletons into display, causing a flurry of strange, made-up creatures popping up in museums all over the country. Edward, he feels betrayed. Their feud spiraled into bribery, spying, and sabotaging dig sites, even poaching each other's men with higher wages.
Get Stevie's heart.
In some cases, they literally blow up entire dig sites.
That could mean that there's dinosaurs out there that we have never discovered.
Exactly.
Wow, that's so petty.
Welcome to The Compendium, an assembly of fascinating things, a weekly variety podcast that gives you just enough information to stand your ground at any social gathering.
We explore stories from the darker corners of true crime, the hidden gems of history, and the jaw-dropping deeds of extraordinary people.
I'm Kyle Risi, your ringmaster for this week's episode.
And I'm Adam Cox, your human dart knife thrower for this week. But I'm looking for an assistant to throw knives at.
How many have you been through?
We basically had to hire an internal recruiter because we're just hiring too many people. And some reason, Kyle, they just keep getting hurt.
You mean you keep murdering them? Guys, if you're new to the show and you want to support us, then the absolute best way to support the show and enjoy exclusive perks is to join us over at Patreon. Because signing up is completely free and you get access to next week's episode a whole 7 days before anyone else.
And did you know, Kyle, for as little as $3 a month, you'll become a fellow freak of the show, unlocking our entire back catalogue. There's about 20 episodes in there. So, yeah, become a certified freak and you can explore them all.
And as a special thank you, as always, our certified freak tier members now receive an exclusive compendium keychain. All you have to do is just DM us your address. And of course, we'll send one straight to your door. So we can always be dangling
Near your crotch.
right there.
Yeah, just over Christmas, we'll be there. At Easter,
You're around with your family, your
a bar
kids.
mitzvah, we can be there.
Well, crotch dangling.
And lastly, guys, please follow us on your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. Your support helps others and keeps these amazing stories coming.
Even better, tell a friend.
Tell the crazy lady down the street.
Tell the damn dog. Adam, today's episode is actually suggested by a few of our listeners via the Freaky Register on Patreon. This one, we have to thank Laura Siri, Lily May, Joe Wainsworth, Alison Johnson, and Jordan Richardson.
Wow, a popular topic.
It is. A lot of people suggested this one.
What is it about then?
Adam, today on the Compendium, we're diving into an assembly of dinosaurs, boys, and their very, very fragile egos.
Well, dinosaurs, obviously, I'm guessing we're covering.
Wrong! No, joking.
Are we dealing with kids? What's going on?
Adam, imagine a moment in history where Americans first discovered dinosaurs, and instantly a whole world of imagination is unleashed. Today's story has taken us on a journey through the mid to late 1800s, a time at the height of the Gilded Age in America, where railroads were roaring west, gold rush towns were sprouting up everywhere, and in the middle of all of that, people start stumbling upon ancient, mysterious creatures all over the West.
So that's when dinosaurs were first discovered back.
No, dinosaurs were discovered just a little bit before that, in around about the 1700s. But in America, this is where they first discovered that actually America also had dinosaurs. And they were bigger, better, and bolder.
Ah, so that's when they were invented.
And overnight, the whole country just seems to go mad for dinosaur fossils. Museums wanted them, newspapers hyped them up. The wealthy elite started writing massive checks just to be the proud owner of these prehistoric beasts. And so across America, a brand new frenzy began, something that will be known as the Bone Rush. It was a race to find, name, and claim as many prehistoric creatures as possible. This is the age that gave us dinosaurs we know and love today. And I'm talking, of course, the Stegosaurus, the Triceratops, the Diplodocus.
And, of course, the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Mr. T-Rex himself, yeah, the lovable, ferocious beast with tiny little arms.
What about the Velociraptor? And a pterodactyl?
And, yeah.
What about saber-toothed tigers?
Hey, that's a mammal, isn't it?
I know, but I'm just going to go to, like, Power Ranger Zords.
I see what you're doing. What's your relationship with dinosaurs?
That feels like a personal question.
Well, I mean, every single kid on this planet who was born in the 80s and the 90s must have some kind of relationship or some fascination with dinosaurs.
I don't know, maybe I'm a bit abnormal then, because I can appreciate a good dinosaur, but I was never like obsessed with dinosaurs.
I was absolutely dinosaur mad. Do you remember back in the day you could get these little magazines that...
Is it the one that you build and it glows in the dark?
Yes. It would be those magazines where you would get like a little part of a bigger model each week. And then you'd read about all the different dinosaurs. But then as you collected each edition, you would then be able to construct your dinosaur model. And it would be all the bones on the inside that would glow in the dark.
Yes, I remember this. It was cool. I did enjoy doing that.
It was fun. I think I ended up stopping because it gets really expensive.
Yeah.
I ended up stopping at the point where I was just about to get the skin that you would clip over it.
Oh, really? Those magazines, that was a thing as a kid. You go to the newsagents every week and you'd get a new magazine or every month. Mm-hmm. I think I have all like 250 magazines of the Animals of Farthing Wood.
You are such a fucking loser.
Well, the thing is, I think my parents just kept buying it for me, even though I lost interest after maybe the first 100 issues.
It's like when you say, Mum, I really love rainbows, and then all of a sudden that becomes your personality. Every year you just get rainbows.
Yeah.
But Adam, this is the era of giants that essentially shaped our childhood imaginations. This is pretty much where they get solidified into our collective consciousness. And at the heart of this mania were two paleontologists who began their careers as friends, but ended up as lifelong enemies. Their names were Edward Drinker Cope and Othniel Charles Marsh.
Wow, these are very posh names. I'm guessing they have some money.
Very Victorian, I would say. Both of them were brilliant. Both of them were ambitious, utterly convinced that they were both destined to become the greatest fossil hunters America has ever seen. But Adam, instead of working together, their partnership ends up collapsing into one of paleontology's pettiest, most chaotic rivalries in scientific history. This wasn't polite academic disagreement. Their feud spiraled into bribery, spying, poaching each other's workers, and sabotaging dig sites. It devolved into literal trench warfare where each side were literally throwing rocks at each other from neighboring quarries. They end up rushing half-finished skeletons into print and on display, causing a flurry of strange, made-up Frankensaur creatures popping up in museums all over the country. These are specimens that even today scientists are still trying to untangle.
Oh, so people thought that these were real dinosaurs, but actually it wasn't a dinosaur at all. It was a mishmash of dinosaurs.
They were a mishmash of dinosaurs, yeah, because at the same time, they didn't know how these dinosaurs went together. So all they could do was just guess.
Yeah, they didn't even have like an IKEA manual or anything.
Nothing. But most shockingly, Adam, was that it wasn't beneath these men to outright destroy fossils just to stop the other from landing a discovery, and in the process, wiping out that dinosaur's imprint on this planet, all out of spite. So they would just destroy these fossils.
That could mean that there's fossils or there's dinosaurs out there that we have never discovered.
Possibly. Maybe they were like the lost of their kind and they destroyed them. But this feud, Adam, stopped being about good science and became a decades-long contest of anything you can do, I can ruin faster.
I see.
And yet, out of their chaos came the foundations of modern paleontology as we know it today. Without these guys, there is no Ross Geller from Friends. Can you imagine a world without Ross Geller?
Are these like the first paleontologists?
Yeah, they basically instilled themselves as the first paleontologists, especially in America.
I guess they're like the Victorian equivalent of Indiana Jones.
Oh, I'd be careful with using the word Victorian because they don't go by our eras. They call this the Gilded Age.
Okay. The Gilded Indiana Jones. It doesn't have the same ring as Victorian.
It doesn't. But also, Indiana Jones wasn't a paleontologist. He was an archaeologist.
I don't know. It's like he could have had a whip.
And so, Adam, today on the Compendium, I'm going to tell you about The Bone Wars, how two men turned dinosaur hunting into a high-stakes, high-drama grudge match. We'll explore their friendship, their betrayal, their sabotage, and the wild mistakes they made and the staggering impact their feud had on science even today. And since this is a war, by the end, we'll decide which of these actually won the so-called war, or whether or not it was the dinosaurs that were the true winners in the story.
I bet neither of them won, but that's just a hunch. Okay, interested.
So before we zoom in to these two gentlemen paleontologists and the feud of the Gilded Age, not Victorian, let's look at what the world was like during this time. Just like other rushes that came and went, America caught bone fever in the middle of the Great American Gold Rush. Do you know much about that?
Yes, it's when the Americans were rushing for gold.
Exactly. So picture it. It's the 1870s. America is in the thick of the Gilded Age. People are rushing to find gold. Railways are racing across the country. Towns are popping up like weeds. And everyone is either mining something, claiming something, or shooting at someone for claiming the same thing.
Things haven't really changed that much then, has they?
No, it's exactly the same. And right alongside this is this bizarre parallel universe where people start stumbling upon these enormous mysterious bones jutting out of the dirt. But while the gold rush really accelerated the discovery of these beasts, especially since every motherfucker already had a shovel, so they were already digging something, the first dinosaur was actually discovered 30 years prior in 1838 when a farmer named John Hopkins was digging in a mole pit on his property when he uncovers a handful of enormous bones. For 20 years, John displays these bones in his house, just inviting locals to come and poke at them and speculate wildly on what these creatures might actually be.
I wonder what people thought when he was like, "Do you want to check out my big bone?"
You
like, John? No, not that one.
And so after 20 years of this, in 1858, a lawyer and amateur geologist named William Falk hears about these bones and decides to investigate for himself. He conducts a full excavation of the site and discovers for the very first time a nearly complete dinosaur skeleton.
And did they know it was a dinosaur at this point, or just like a dead animal? But
they're very much aware of what was being found over in Europe. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like this America has its own dinosaurs now.
I see.
But also they were way bigger. So Falk sends his fossils to a Dr. Joseph Leidy, a very important figure in the story. At the time, he was one of the leading anatomists at the time. Leidy basically pieces the bones together. He names the creature Hadrosaurus falki in honor of the man who found it. And instantly, Adam, America is introduced to this idea that dinosaurs were not only real, but they were also huge and buried all over America. And so the American bone rush begins from here. Whenever someone was out digging for gold or blowing up a ravine in order to redirect a water supply, they would stumble upon a find, triggering literal armies of fossil hunters to descend on the site. Landowners would then get hundreds of dollars in exchange, and fossil hunters would then load up crates and crates of bones into trains like they were shipping treasure chests back east. These bones landed in the collection of museums, universities, and of course, rich people. And at the center of all of this are our two main characters who are basically treating the American West like their own personal fossil Hunger Games. And although for them this was about science and discovery, it also became about power. At the time, paleontology in America was fairly new, and so for them this was a literal land grab. It was thought that whoever controlled the fossils and could name the most dinosaurs would control the future of American paleontology. Both these men were absolutely convinced that they were the chosen ones.
That's so strange to go. It's almost like Pokemon. If you can catch them all, then you win. And I guess they were discovering like brand new dinosaurs and species that wouldn't have been discovered elsewhere in the world, I assume.
I think largely there is, of course, overlap because you've got to remember we've got tectonic plate shift. So some of these dinosaurs would be also found elsewhere. But at this moment in time, most of the excavations that were happening were kind of in Europe and America. So the dinosaurs were largely different. The first guy we should know about is Edward Drinker Cope. He was born to a wealthy Quaker family in July 1840 in Philadelphia. And growing up, Edward is diplomatically described as relentless but mischievous. But when you read between the lines, He's basically a spoiled brat. But despite this, he has this energy and curiosity that sparks a lifelong fascination with animals. At 12, he attends the Friends boarding school near Westchester in Pennsylvania, where he doesn't really apply himself. He fails most of his subjects. He's, of course, disobedient, or as historians put it, a quarreler with poor conduct.
What does that mean?
Basically, he's a cunt with a bad temper.
Wow. Language, Kyle. That needs bleeping.
He regularly writes letters home asking for larger and larger allowances. He's basically bankrupting his family, and they're also more and more frustrated with the fact that he's just not applying himself at school. His poor performance at school means that his father makes the decision that Edward is not going to go back to school after summer break in 1855. Instead, he's going to stay home where his father can personally steer him towards what he considers a more respectable path.
And what's that?
The plan was to buy Edward a farm and groom him into becoming a gentleman farmer.
A gentleman farmer. So what's the difference between a regular farmer and a gentleman farmer?
Is he farming more politely? Is he not elbow deep in cows? Or is there a separate entrance for the gentry? I don't know.
Maybe he just wears like a nice top hat and a bow tie.
While you're out in the farm. I don't get it.
Oh, look at that gentleman farmer over there. He's so polite.
Either way, his father is convinced that this will give Edward the skills and the discipline that he needs for a stable, respectable future. Edward, however, doesn't see it that way, mostly because to him, farming is literally the most boring, imaginable thing that he could be doing with his time.
Yeah, no one wants to do what their parents tell them to do.
Absolutely. And besides, he wanted to have a career in the sciences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So instead of working the farm that his father literally buys him, he decides to instead rent out the land and use the income to fund his scientific pursuits. On the side, he takes up a part-time job at the Academy of Natural Sciences, where he's basically reclassifying and cataloguing specimens.
It's a bit weird that he's considered a rebel, but he's also a scientist. Like, I could never consider a scientist as a rebel these days.
Yeah, they're just dorks.
Hang on, they're trying to save the world, Kyle.
That's true. Dorks are trying to save the world.
But just the thought right back then, it was like, no, you're being a rebel. You're a tearaway.
Possibly. And I guess because it's a new thing, is if we were YouTubers today, right? Our parents would be like, oh, it might not be a stable career. But actually, people have made really great careers out of being YouTubers.
More money than their parents.
Exactly.
God, he just wasn't appreciated in his own time, Kyle.
And I couldn't find out if his dad knew they rented out the land. I'm not sure if he's doing this on the sly. But it is funny to imagine him every morning putting on his overalls, jumping on his tractor and saying, Dad, I'm off to work, only to drive to the academy on his tractor.
And then he comes home and he has to, I don't know, put some mud on his face, maybe like rolls in some poo. And it's like, what a day.
You'll never believe the day that I've had with the chickens.
But to be fair, 6 months later, the dad's going to be like, where are my potatoes?
Here they are. Those are eggs. Anyway, he does apply himself at the academy, and after 4 years, he manages to publish his first paper.
Do you mean 4 years he was lying to his dad about a farm?
I don't know if he was lying. I think it's just speculation. But at this moment, it really looks like he's getting his shit together. And even though his dad really wants him to be a gentleman farmer, his dad eventually gives in and he agrees to pay for Edward to attend university. And so in 1861, Edward enrolls at the University of Pennsylvania to study comparative autonomy under Joseph Leidy, the same guy who first brings America its first dinosaur.
And so comparative anatomy, is that comparing anatomy?
Exactly, yes. Essentially the study of how different animal bodies compare, the similarities, the differences, and what those clues reveal essentially about how species evolved. Because at this time, Darwin's Origin of Species had only been out just a few years. So the whole field was exploring these new ideas, new arguments about evolution. And so Edward throws himself right in the middle of all of this. Over the next few years, he works on recataloguing the herpetological collection at the Academy of Natural Sciences. And he keeps publishing papers, mostly on reptiles and amphibians. That's exactly what herpetology means. It's the study of reptiles and amphibians.
Easy for you to say.
Then in 1863, when Edward is 23, he meets a girl that his father hates. And the reason is she isn't related to the family.
She's not related?
Yeah, that's it.
So he wants Edward to keep it in the family and have some incest.
Yeah.
How, like, are we talking sisters, cousins, second cousins? What's deemed acceptable?
It'll be cousins. They're Quakers.
What, first cousins?
I don't know.
I still feel like you'll come up with a web for.
That's it. His father basically looks at him and is like, absolutely not. Your children will be normal and I will not have that.
There'll be 10 toes. That's not acceptable.
We're Quakers, boy. We're aiming for 12. And so he does the reasonable Victorian patriarchal thing and he ships Edward off to travel around Europe.
Victorian?
I know. Gilded Age is a spelling mistake.
What is the version of that? The Gilded Age? Sure. But what's if you're a Victorian, so you're from the Victorian Age.
Yeah.
So you're a gilded and an American.
An industrialist.
I'm going to call them American Victorians.
You can't do that. You're basically forcing our American brethren to accept that they were under the crown again when they kind of ripped themselves away from that in 1777.
Someone correct me with what the right term is, and then I'll call it that.
Yeah, until then, you're Victorians.
American Victorians.
So the thinking is that he has sent him to Europe to keep him away from this girl, but that's the unofficial reason.
Did you know Microsoft has officially ended support for Windows 10? Upgrade to Windows 11 with an LG Gram laptop. Voted PC Mag's Reader's Choice Top Laptop Brand for 2025. Thin and ultra lightweight, the LG Gram keeps you productive anywhere. And Windows 11 gives you access to free security updates and ongoing feature upgrades. Visit lgusa.com/iHeart for great seasonal savings on LG Gram laptops with Windows 11. PC Mag Reader's Choice used with permission. All rights reserved.
The official reason is because he's trying to keep him from being conscripted into the Civil War, which they were currently in the middle of at the time. So while in Europe, Edward visits loads of museums. He meets respected scientists across different fields. Eventually, he wanders into Berlin and he meets the second guy in our story, and that is Othniel Charles Marsh, a 33-year-old American studying at the University of Berlin. Othniel is from Lockport in New York. His mother was Mary Gaines Peabody, and basically he comes from the infamous Peabody family, which makes his uncle, George Peabody, the wealthy banker and philanthropist of the age. Listeners from especially Georgia might recognize his name from the Peabody Awards that are handed out by the University of Georgia, I think every year. And George is widely considered the founder of what we would now call like charitable giving today. But when Othniel is 3 years old, his mother actually dies from cholera, and it's his uncle George who takes financial responsibility for him. This means that Othniel ends up getting an excellent education. He ends up studying geology, chemistry, anatomy, vertebrate, paleontology. So he's a bloody smart kid. He eventually graduates with a couple degrees from a couple really good schools, including Yale.
Couple?
Oh, yeah. He doesn't stop there, Adam. Because after this, he decides that he's going to stick with the world of academia and he lands a Berkeley scholarship. And his plan is to build a full academic career. So he just keeps racking up more and more degrees across different fields.
Fine, so he's smart, but I bet he can't put up a shelf.
Well, that's the criticism that he gets here. Like, he's academic and he's smart and he's intelligent, but he's not worldly. Do you know what I mean?
He hasn't got street smarts.
Exactly. Not like Edward, who grew up on a farm. And it's a scholarship that he gets that actually brings him to Berlin, where he studies paleontology and anatomy, which is where he meets Edward Cope. And they actually, Adam, they become really good friends. They write to each other regularly. They swap discoveries. They debate ideas. They're nerding out about paleontology and things that are going on at the time.
That's how the best of frenemies start out, because they start off like they get along and everything, and something like changes. And then they're just set on this path where they're constantly fighting each other. It's like Professor Xavier and Magneto from X-Men.
Oh God, why do you have to bring an X-Men reference into this? No one gets it. No one understands.
Yes, they will. The 10 other people will get it.
If it's not X-Men, it's Power Rangers with you. So they've got this bit of a friendship going on. And because both of them are busy classifying new species, their friendship reaches a point where they literally start naming fossils after each other. Othniel names a 66 million-year-old mosasaur Cope, which is basically after Edward Cope. I know it sounds unfortunate, but it's the Latin for Cope.
Sounds like Copanus.
I know, doesn't it? Edward then returns a favor with a 307 million-year-old amphibian that he calls Colosteus marshy. So it's sweet. It's a full scientific bromance that they've got going on between them.
I see.
It's like people naming stars after people today. Do you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
I'd name an animal after you. Some sort of slug. A deadly one, maybe.
At least it's deadly.
Would you return the favor?
Yeah, if I could find something that fits, it has to be quite scrappy.
And you breed a Jack Russell.
Yeah, and quite small. and annoying, yappy. That'd be a Kyle.
Do you know when people have those discussions in the office and they always go, what kind of animal would I be? And I'm really good at telling people what kind of dog breed they would be. But I don't understand why I'm always a really small animal.
You're always a Jack Russell.
I don't know why, though.
Because, Kyle.
I would say like a lovable, trusty golden retriever.
No, you're definitely not that.
I see myself as a golden retriever.
Yeah, you're friendly, but I'm going to keep you outside most of the day.
You can't be trusted on the carpet. So these two guys, they found each other, but the thing is, though, their personalities are very different. Remember, Othniel grows up in a wealthy upper-crust world thanks to his uncle, so he's polished academically. Meanwhile, Edward, he's a Quaker. He's more of a farm boy turned scientist. He's passionate and brilliant, but far less formally trained than Othniel. And because they're both proud men, they both quietly look down on each other for different reasons. You definitely see this simmering away in their early letters to each other. Like Edward will miss maybe some detail in a fossil that they're discussing, and Othniel will be like, don't be so hard on yourself. It's easy to overlook this if you haven't studied the work of like so-and-so or whatever, right? Then Edward in turn will then drop hits that Othniel isn't nearly as worldly or field tested as he is. Do you know what I mean? So it's friendly on the surface, but the intent behind the jabs isn't always that clear. And so it's often brushed over, but it's definitely there.
Like very passive-aggressive little comments and snide remarks.
Yeah, you can't quite place it. We all know those types of people. Do you know what I mean? And so eventually in 1866, Othniel returns to the United States and he is appointed the professor of vertebrate paleontology at Yale. Officially, he is the first paleontologist professor in the entire country. He is literally the first, which sounds impressive, but he gets this because he basically convinces his uncle to donate $150,000 to build the Peabody Museum of Natural History at Yale. And so, of course, once the university accepts the money, he then installs himself as head of the museum.
I see.
So it's not like Yale can exactly turn around and say no. But regardless of the method, this moment marks the very beginning of paleontology as an official academic discipline in America. And little does Othniel know that a century and a half later, we'll have Ross Geller proudly following in his footsteps. I can't imagine a world without Ross.
Ross Geller.
He's my hero. So to actually fill the museum with specimens, Othniel uses some of his inheritance to recruit an army of fossil hunters, which he sends across the American West with one mission: dig up anything and everything that looks even slightly prehistoric. If it pokes out of the geological record, they are prying it out because he's eager for specimens. And at this point, he'll just accept pretty much anything.
Will he go as far as making up a dinosaur?
He's going to make them all up, right? Because they're all unclassified. None of them are discovered. So he's making all of them up.
Yeah, but is he getting like a cat and a dog and go, hey, it's like this prehistoric animal?
We'll see. So whatever these fossil hunters find, they basically pack them into crates, they load them onto trains and send them off to Othniel, who then pays them handsomely. Other people start seeing how lucrative the fossil hunting game is, and they set up their own teams. And whatever they find, they start sending them to various paleontologists around the country who are now kind of like starting to crop up. But this becomes, Adam, a massive free-for-all that ends up causing real damage to the field. Remember, many of these paleontologists are spread across the country. They don't exactly have an online database or a central kind of system to submit their findings to. So very often, the very same species gets dug up. Let's say Stegosaurus, for example, except one specimen might be a baby Stegosaurus and another one might be an adult. But then paleontologists end up classifying them as two separate dinosaurs.
Yeah, it feels like it could be quite hard to keep track because if you've got a lot of people within the country doing all this excavation at the same time, like how do you keep a central database when they're all over doing this?
All they've got to rely on are the different papers that get written and then distributed across the country, which is a slow process in kind of Victorian America. So it will be months and months and months, sometimes even years before you then open up a paper and then you kind of say, oh, this one was discovered. It's the same one. They named it first, so they get it, right? But the reality is some people knew that they were looking at the same species, but admitting that meant that they would lose the credit for that discovery.
So they just say that it is a new species?
Exactly. So instead they just declare this, nope, this is definitely a new species. And they stick with that.
So someone's already discovered a Stegosaurus, which is the adult, and then someone finds a baby Stegosaurus and calls it
a pygmy Stegosaurus or whatever.
Yeah, or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have to, at this point in time, have had a qualification in paleontology, or could you just be like, I've got a shovel?
I think if you want a job like in a museum, then probably you need to be. But you've got a situation where Edwards isn't formally trained. He doesn't have the fancy qualifications that Othniel has. So his ability to land a decent job in a very fancy museum is a lot more restricted. So you can go off and you can do these things. You just can't land prestigious jobs, essentially.
I see.
And so because of this, the scientific record starts filling up with loads of duplicates under different names. But hilariously, it gets even messier. When these things get dug up, there are, of course, no photographs of how they were found. They're literally dug up, chucked into a bunch of crates, and then when these bones reach the museum, these paleontologists have to work out how they all fit together. So it becomes very easy to mistake a neck vertebra for a tail vertebra. So suddenly you've got a dinosaur classified as a brand new species when actually it's one that's already known.
Yeah, well, they put it together back to front.
Exactly. And those are just the unintentional mistakes. There's also very much an incentive to assemble a skeleton, realize it matches an existing species, and then quietly rearrange the bone so it looks like something completely new, purely just so they can claim a brand new discovery.
And how are people going to know about this? They can just blag it.
And there's also no rush to correct these mistakes because, again, doing so means admitting that you didn't discover a new species or that you're a complete idiot for getting it wrong. Like, you're supposed to be a scientist. You're not supposed to make these mistakes.
Yeah, but then, I don't know, this feels like a whole new kind of world to discover. You're going to make mistakes.
It comes down to like scientific integrity in these matters, right?
Or snobbery.
But there's so much pride and so much arrogance and ego in this field at this time because these are distinguished people going into these fields that they don't want to lose face. And so even after all these years, modern paleontologists are still cleaning up some of these messes that were created all these years ago. They're discovering these different fossils and they're going, actually, this is wrong. That's a vertebrae, not a tailbone.
Are you telling me that the Tyrannosaurus Rex might not actually exist?
Well, I mean, we know the Tyrannosaurus Rex exists, but think of the most recent discovery they made, especially with the Tyrannosaurus Rex, is that he isn't this svelte, ferocious animal that we grew up with. They're actually really chubby and fat.
What?
Yeah, when we were at the dinosaur park, they updated their T-Rex to be this big, massive, fat T-Rex. They did look like Barney the dinosaur.
Are you serious?
I'm 100% serious.
But that goes against everything we've learned.
Exactly. And so we hold on to these beliefs for so many years that sometimes it does become difficult to undo these tangled messes.
So how do they know that the Tyrannosaurus Rex is a bit fat?
I think it's because when they look at the bone structure and the density and they work out how much muscle mass it would have on it based on other things, I think they just put two and two together and they can work it out.
I see. That might explain why they've got small arms as well. Just like they've just been sitting on the sofa the whole time, not
possibly.
working out.
There's even a theory that they just had even smaller hands because it was just like enveloped by fat.
That doesn't sound ferocious.
It doesn't, does it? And here's the thing. Edward and Othniel, they are the absolute worst offenders at this. They are so prolific and end up with so many fossils that they just don't have time to process them all properly. So between them, they end up discovering 142 dinosaur species. They fuck up so much that modern day paleontologists estimate that maybe about 30 of those that they discovered is actually valid.
Wow.
I know. So it's just mostly guesswork, overreach, and just pure nonsense a lot of the time because they don't know what they're doing. They've got nothing to kind of go by.
Yeah, fair enough. They were the first people to do this and they probably discovered new animals or whatever. So I don't know. They didn't have the technology back then. They didn't have all this knowledge that's shared around the world.
People from the Victorian times are stupid. So it's just really funny to me to imagine these two basically working with a glue gun in one hand and a dream in another, just sticking random bones together and then proudly declaring a brand new dinosaur. Tick! Next! And next crate comes in, they unpack them all and like, right, what am I feeling today? I'm feeling ferocious. And they're like, put this one here and stick that one there. And then voila, it's a T-Rex. Next!
Feels like an art project.
So while Othniel is busy building his fossil empire at Yale, Edward becomes the professor of zoology at Haverford College, which is impressive, but technically he doesn't have the qualifications for the physical job. He is brilliant, but remember, he didn't put the work in when it mattered, so he doesn't really have any formal qualifications. To fix that, of course, Daddy quietly pulls some strings. The college responds by awarding Edward an honorary master's degree. Essentially, that's his golden ticket to getting the job, so a bit of nepotism there.
It's just a shortcut to the role, so he's not necessarily qualified.
Yeah.
But Daddy had a word with someone.
Daddy, I want the job at the college.
Yeah, I hate that kind of thing.
So a few years later, he finally marries a woman that his father does approve of. His cousin.
Oh.
They have a daughter who, to his father's disappointment, is fairly normal looking. Alongside his job, he settles into a comfortable life with a good house, a few servants, everything is running smoothly. But unlike Othniel, whose world is funded by Uncle Peabody, Edward's constant concern is finding more money to fuel his research. He has no idea when that money will run out, so he has to be as prolific as humanly possible. So throughout the 1870s, just like Othniel, Edward sends out a team of fossil hunters all over the USA to dig up specimens for him. He works so fast, Adam, and is so prolific that in a single year, he publishes 76 papers on various discoveries and his travels.
Wow, that's pretty good going.
By today's standards, it is literally astonishing. But 76 papers in 1 year does mean it's riddled with errors.
I was going to say, it's a whole load of bullshitting.
Exactly. Misclassifications, spelling mistakes, wild assumptions. He's basically rushing. It's because he wakes up every day not knowing if tomorrow the money will run out. You know what I mean? So he's forced into quantity over quality, essentially. Meanwhile, Othniel is way more relaxed. He doesn't have to worry about money, but also his research reaches a wider audience due to his connections thanks to Uncle Mr. Peabody. This means for less work, his reputation grows faster than Edward's. So while the two are building their careers, both Edwards and Othniel still correspond regularly, updating each other on their latest finds. At one point, Edward invites Othniel to his fossil pit in the West. It's very much like, come down, we'll dig together, it'll be cute, we can continue our bromance, I'll tell you about my cousin. And it all goes really, really well. But at the end of the visit, Othniel secretly bribes Edward's pit operator to send all future fossils to him instead of Edward.
Ah, that's a bit of a...
I know, it's appalling fossil digging etiquette, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's not how you behave when a man invites you to his pit.
How do you behave, Carl? It's very sneaky. It's not very gentlemanlike.
No, it's not.
I guess once he receives the bones, he's going to be like, I'm going to steal your ideas. So why is he doing that? Is it because he can't do it or he's not very good at it?
No, he has the funds, he's got the resources. But Othniel does this because he sees how prolific Edward is becoming despite the errors in his work. And he starts to see him as a real potential threat, not just to his reputation, but to the possibility that Edward might stumble upon a career-defining discovery before he does.
I'm guessing like Edward is doing it really like fast and furious in a way. And so throwing as much shit at the wall, seeing what sticks, and then something's going to like land.
Yeah. So when Edward finds out about this, of course, he is furious. He stops it immediately, and this puts a major strain on their relationship. But Othniel's fears do start to come true when in 1867, Edward discovers a brand new specimen in Kansas, which he names Elasmosaur platyurus. Basically, it's a giant ocean-dwelling marine reptile with enormous flippers and a very, very, extraordinarily long tail, far longer than its actual body itself.
This is one of the biggest dinosaurs found, is it?
Exactly. This is the first major fossil discovery to come out of a state that is famously nowhere near the ocean. So that people are like, what the fuck? How did that even happen? This kind of starts to make people realize that actually the world is constantly shifting on these tectonic plates.
Wow.
And this thing, Adam, is massive. It's 34 feet long. It's by far the biggest specimen anyone has found so far. And so overnight, the bone rush intensifies. Hordes of fossil hunters descend into the region. And so Edward displays his brand new dinosaur proudly in a museum. Thousands and thousands of people come to see it. Everyone is talking about it. And for the very first time, his name is finally getting up there along with the likes of Othniel, because he just gets the success because of his connections, right? Mm-hmm. Edward has to literally, like you said, throw a lot of shit at the wall to see what sticks. And now finally, he's made a big discovery.
Yeah, a really big one. So it's worked out for him. So I'm guessing Othniel is going to be really mad at this.
Yes. One day, Othniel comes to see this amazing new discovery. He takes one look at it and says, "You've put the head on the wrong end."
Really? Did he?
Which, to be fair, it is easy to make this mistake. Like, looking at this thing, you wouldn't expect its neck to be longer than its tail. Naturally, Edward doesn't believe him. They have this full-blown public argument, and in the end, Edward calls his mentor, Joseph Leedy, to come in and settle the dispute. Leedy arrives, he picks up the skull, takes one look at it, and it confirms that Othniel is right.
Oh, no.
Yeah, he put the head on the wrong end. So it's a dinosaur with a super long neck and a short tail, not the other way around.
I see. That does make more sense in terms of trying to find food. Why would you need a really long tail in the ocean?
Why would you need a really long neck?
But to put your neck or head into crevices and eat.
I guess so, yeah. I don't know. I looked at it and thought, actually, that's quite an easy mistake to make, but yeah.
In terms of what I'm picturing, I don't know what it is. But I feel like, obviously, this fossil is in the ground and it's probably laid with its head and its tail in the right place. Did they not make a note?
Well, remember, they're not digging up a lot of these fossils, right? They're sending out these fossil hunters to dig these things up. When they discover a fossil, they don't photograph it because they don't have the cameras, right? So they just literally dig out all the bones, pop them into a crate and send them off, and he has to work out how they go together.
Shouldn't there be like a deputy that's like taking notes to go, it's here, and just like a little sketch maybe or something like that?
Absolutely. There's probably something that they're implemented in the future. But up until this point, it leaves it open for these big mistakes to be made, just like this.
I'll just blame Steve, my deputy bone collector.
Yeah, why not? But not only this, Leedy also says that Elasmosaurus is not actually a new discovery. It's actually a Discosaurus that he discovered back in 1851.
Oh, no.
Of course, watching all of this, Othniel is gleeful as hell. Meanwhile, Edward is left completely mortified and humiliated. Not only has Othniel gotten one up on him, but now his own mentor, the man he respects most in this world, has publicly backed Othniel.
Was his Elasmosaur or whatever bigger?
It just was another Melasmosaur. It could be the biggest one. Maybe he could still get credit for that, but it doesn't matter. He's not made a massive discovery, right?
But they discovered that Kansas may have been near an ocean at one point.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's still some merit in his discovery. But because Edward has already presented this specimen at the American Physiological Society with the head on the wrong end and also under the wrong name, he now has to face the prospect of having to issue a correction and essentially become a complete laughingstock in the scientific community, which is not something he wants to do. So instead, what he does is he goes off and buys back every single copy of that paper that he sent out.
Oh.
But he doesn't get them all, especially the precious copy that Othniel has. Leedy eventually finds out what Edward has done and he comes down on him hard. He goes ahead and publishes the correction himself, making Edward look even worse. Not only was he now wrong, but he was now sloppy and also unethical. So it's not a good look.
Wow, he's even taken to the papers to do this.
And this is his mentor, the guy who's supposed to be nurturing him.
Yeah, feels like very much like high school.
It feels vindictive to me, but from Leedy's perspective, this is a lesson that he thinks Edward needs in order to be the best paleontologist that he can be. But for Edward, he feels betrayed, and it was all Othniel's doing. And so for Edward, this ruins any friendship that they ever had between them.
It's over.
It is over, bitch. But meanwhile, Othniel thinks that Edward will eventually come around. He'll look at this and go, this was funny. He'll laugh it off, and they'll be friends again. That is until 1877 when Othniel gets a letter from an Arthur Lakes in Colorado. Arthur has basically been out looking for fossilized leaves when he stumbles across something far more interesting. Bones.
Did you know Microsoft has officially ended support for Windows 10? Upgrade to Windows 11 with an LG Gram laptop. Voted PC Mag's Reader's Choice Top Laptop Brand for 2025. Thin and ultra lightweight, the LG Gram keeps you productive anywhere. And Windows 11 gives you access to free security updates and ongoing feature upgrades. Visit lgusa.com/iHeart for great seasonal savings on LG Gram laptops with Windows 11. PC Mag Reader's Choice used with permission. All rights reserved.
Fossilized leaves sounds really dull.
Yeah, maybe. I think they normally find them like in slate or like sediment that kind of forms, and they split them open. They see these lovely impressions of leaves and stuff.
Yeah, but to choose to go find that and not go and find bones, like, what a choice. And then he does find bones, which I think must have been a good day.
Exactly. He does think it's cool. He thinks that someone's going to be interested in this. And so he sends a few of the bones to Othniel, knowing that he has this big reputation. But he also sends a few to Edward, who is this rising star in the field at the time. Arthur's thinking is he'll send a few samples to any paleontology nerd who has a postal address, and he'll see who basically pays him the best rate. It's the fossil hunting version of shopping around for the best quote.
I see.
Before Othniel can respond, Edward sends Arthur $100 for the full set of bones and immediately publishes his findings. Arthur then sends a polite follow-up letter to Othniel, letting him know that the bones he sent him earlier should probably go to Edward, since Edward has now paid for them and he would probably appreciate the full set.
Well, that's presumptive that he would just send them back.
I think maybe he's expecting there to be a degree of scientific integrity here. Do you know what I mean? He sent him a sample. What do you make of this? I've also sent them to a few other people. Oh, that person's got back to me. Could you please forward those on? Maybe put a couple quid in there to pay for the postage. I don't know.
Yeah, but I guess he doesn't know how petty they've been.
No, he has no idea. Othniel is outraged by this. He thinks that Edward has deliberately robbed him of a fossil and a potential big discovery. And now he feels exactly the same sting that Edward felt with the whole kind of dinosaur head on the wrong end incident a few months back. And so from this moment on, it sparks decades of pettiness and sabotage, and it all erupts from here.
So what did they do? How bad did it get between them?
So Othniel retaliates. He hears Edward is digging into a huge bone bed in Como Bluff in Wyoming and immediately sends his own team to stake a claim of the land. Edwards finds out that Othniel is in the area and he basically doubles his crew in order to overshadow anything that Othniel's team might produce in any way. But soon enough, the numbers even out and they start relentlessly spying on each other. Whenever one side strikes a big find, the other sets up a dig close by. They keep trying to poach each other's men with higher wages.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something else.
What?
Or just poach each other's men, because they're, I don't know.
What, just shoot them? That kind of poaching.
No, I thought it sounded more sexual initially.
Not sexual, Adam.
Get Steve, he's hot.
Which basically means that for these fossil hunters, digging in this area becomes very lucrative. The average wage ends up cranking higher and higher just so the other team can keep their own teams. When the high wages starts causing them to hemorrhage money, both sides try a new approach by trying to keep the dig location secret. But the diggers, remember, Adam, these are freelancers. They have no loyalty to either side. And so because they all end up in the same saloon at the end of the working day, they just tell each other everything.
What dig are you at? And they're just like,
exactly.
"Well,
What did you find today?
What are you getting paid? Fine, I'm going to come down there tomorrow."
Exactly. So it just ends up being so pointless. In some cases, when each side poaches the other side's diggers, they later discover they willingly let them be poached so they could act as spies for them inside the team.
Oh, wow. Send an inside man.
It gets surprisingly sophisticated. There are moments where a team excavates a specimen, they crate it up, they label it for shipment, and then the spy will quietly swap the delivery address and send the whole thing off to Othniel's museum.
I didn't think that there'd be spies in paleontology. Wow.
It's ruthless. They all have one thing to gain, and that is legacy and the credit of discovering a big thing. Do you know what I mean? They don't want to take any risks.
Yeah, I can see why they went to such lengths, even though I don't know any of these people until today.
But probably the worst thing they do is both Othniel and Edwards become so protective of their dig sites that they will routinely destroy fossils just so if they end up in the other one's hands, it'll just be completely worthless. So they'll chip things off, they'll remove parts, so it's like they don't have a complete skeleton. It's awful. Adam, in some cases, when they were done, they would literally blow up the entire dig site with dynamite just so the others wouldn't be able to gain access to that plot.
So they would have collected as many bones as they could and then blow it up just to make sure there's nothing else left.
Not always. Sometimes they would just be like, we're done here.
Don't need these bones.
Exactly. Just
wow.
blow it up.
That doesn't feel like they're being the most ethical or whatever the word is.
These are pieces of natural history that literally take millions of years to form and they're blowing them up all out of spite.
Yeah.
They're like behaving like kids. Also, this sounds exaggerated, but one time when they had set up two sites brazenly close to each other, the tensions get so heated that they end up in a full-blown rock-throwing war. Actual trench warfare, but with rocks.
Well, some of them are fossils, like throwing bones.
Yeah. Oh, I'll send this one to the museum.
Yeah, I've been missing this.
Just what I needed. Adam, they let this go on for 15 years.
15 years?
15 years. Instead of just moving to another region or getting out of each other's way, they deliberately keep themselves in this constant state of paranoia just to make sure that the other one doesn't ever get an upper hand.
That is a long time just to hold a grudge.
It is so long. And this isn't just contained within the dig sites, it spills out into their personal lives as well. When they start classifying the dinosaurs coming out of these pits, they begin naming them after each other again, but not like before when it was like Mosasaurus copianus or Colosseus marshi. Like those days are gone. Those are flattering names. Othniel classifies a specimen as Anicenchus Copator, which literally translates into Copator, which is Edward's name.
Wow, that's so petty. Although to be fair, I don't know if the other names were that like complimentary.
No, I guess not. But the thing is, though, this is now in the scientific record. Their feud is spilled over into it, and it's there forever now because they're not going to exactly change its name, are they?
Yeah, I guess so. And that's going to set the world. Everyone's going to know that someone's having a dig at them, essentially.
Yeah. So basically now they're coming after each other's credibility. As we know, Edward has this habit of rushing out papers into print, and they're often riddled with inaccuracies. Othniel ends up spending more time than he spends on his own papers, publicly critiquing all of Edward's work. And so for a while, issue after issue of the American Naturalist Journal is just Othniel listing out everything Edward has ever gotten wrong.
Wow.
In the end, just to put a stop to this, Edward literally buys a controlling stake of the journal just so he can block whatever Othniel writes about him. But also, in doing this, he turns the tables and attacks him right back, mostly just ensuring that he's always the one who gets the last word. So, like, he'll post something, he'll be like, oh yeah, Edward's got X, Y, and Z wrong, and then Edwards will just be like, come back with a retort and be like, no, you're wrong, these are the reason why, and that's it. And then if he sends a response back in, he'll just block it from being printed.
This is like the equivalent of someone doing a Facebook status update.
Yeah.
Like having a go at someone, like their neighbor or something.
Exactly. And they'll post the post and then they'll be like, okay, great, I've got the last word. I'm now going to block you.
Yeah.
So you can see it, but you can't respond. Yeah. Or turn comments off. I used to do that all the time.
I like the fact that this kind of behavior has been going on for centuries.
Yeah, it's not beneath anyone. By the late 1800s, Othniel uses his connections to George Peabody's legacy to become the chief paleontologist of the US Geological Survey, as well as the head of the National Academy of Sciences. So these are fucking big roles. This basically, Adam, gives him access to federal funding, which means he can now cut Edward off from receiving any government support entirely. Every application that has Edward's name on it or even associated with him in any way is just denied, denied, denied. And as a result, Edward's influence in the field starts to dwindle. This is a man who relies heavily on government funding. So when that support dries up, he is forced into riskier and riskier ways of just keeping himself afloat and also getting more funding to fund his work. And so he is desperate at this point.
What does he do in order to get the money then?
Well, to stay afloat, he starts investing in a bunch of silver mines, which works for a while until the bottom falls out of the industry and the stock is essentially worthless. And by 1886, Edward essentially, Adam, loses everything. His family are forced to move out of their home just so they can rent it out so they can use the money to survive. But Adam, it gets worse. Because of Othniel's influence in government, he manages to push through a new law that states that any fossils that have ever been collected using federal funding now belong to the Smithsonian Museum. So anything that Edwards has ever dug up now belongs to the government.
How can he do that?
He did it.
Wow.
Isn't that awful?
He's clearly got a lot of power and sway.
That's it. So now Edward's life's work is now under threat and his entire fossil collection is going to be seized by the government. And so Edward has very little that he can retaliate with, right? He is completely ruined. He's got no reputation. What else can he do? But he does have one thing. All these years, Edward has been keeping a journal documenting every single mistake and misdeed that Othniel has committed. I'm talking dishonest scientific errors, publishing blunders, literally everything.
And so he hasn't published any of these at this point in time. He's just been keeping a quiet note.
A little journal, yeah. Basically, he writes it all down in this little black book, a shit list, basically. He takes the journal to the New York Herald, and on the 12th of January, 1890, they run the first article accusing Othniel of a bunch of things, including plagiarism. He accuses him of employing others to do the scientific work on his behalf and then signing his own name to it. He accuses him of misusing government funds only to enrich himself and others. He describes one of Othniel's works as the most remarkable collection of errors and ignorance of anatomy and literature on the subject ever displayed. It's so Victorian.
Wow, what a dig.
For a time, it was quite the scandal, actually.
So actually, in some ways, Edward has really taken the higher ground a lot of this time. Like, he's made errors. I know he's like pushing out a lot of stuff, but he's never really discredited Othniel before.
Reportedly, though, the article is riddled with spelling and grammatical errors. So it does raise questions about the credibility of the piece, but only just a little bit. The most important part was that information was now out there in the wild, but also for the very first time, this is when the world discovers that these two are in the middle of this really vicious rivalry.
Oh, so this is the first time. I thought it was quite public.
It wasn't really public, no. It's now a bitchy feud.
Oh. So does this start a bit of a war within the papers and stuff?
Pretty much, yeah. It ends up setting off this series of vicious debates across the scientific community, specifically, though, about Othniel's power and influence in the field. In the end, there's no formal investigation into the more serious allegations, especially about misappropriating government funding, but that is only because before the pressure fully hits, the US Geological Survey are forced to remove Othniel from his position just to escape the scrutiny, which, as you can imagine, now puts the ball firmly back in Edward's court.
Yeah, so Othniel got his comeuppance. So with both of their reputations now ruined, essentially, what do they do? Have they got anything else to lose? Do they keep going at it, or do they make amends?
They try to kind of recover. However, it's Edward who slowly starts to recover first. After Joseph Leidy, remember he's his mentor, after he dies, Edward takes over as professor of zoology at the University of Pennsylvania. The salary bump basically means that he can move his family back into their home, and for the first time in years, he starts to get his life back on track. But he's still dealing with that law that says that any specimens collected with government funding now belong to the Smithsonian Museum. For a while, he does resist handing anything over, but eventually in 1895, he decides that he's going to sell 4 of his collections, so around 13,000 specimens, to the American Museum of Natural History and a few other institutions. So he's got a lot of stuff, man.
How much does that go for?
He gets about $59,000 in total, so far less than what he wanted. But at least he gets something before the government come knocking and trying to take all of his stuff away.
Yeah, that's smart.
So he still keeps his private collection, which obviously they can't touch. So he isn't completely stripped of his entire life's work. But the rivalry ends up spanning their entire lives through their rise into scientific success to their financial ruin. And what is wild is that they didn't need to do any of this. Do you know what I mean? It was just so pointless. If they just stayed out of each other's way, they could have at least achieved great things, probably even greater things, if they were just left to their own devices.
That's what I mean. They seem to spend their time discrediting the other person, whereas they could have, fair enough, they might put out some papers that were wrong or whatever, spelling mistakes, but they could have been focusing on new discoveries and things like that.
Exactly. Like we said earlier on, Othniel was just so preoccupied with spending most of his time discrediting Edward's work, rather than writing his own papers and advancing his own sciences. All they gained was just years of stress and misery, but then also mutual destruction. It was just pointless. They suffered immensely just by being in each other's orbits.
And in a way, if they did make a great discovery, they could have gone down in history, but they've gone down on history for the wrong reasons.
People called the story the Bone Wars, right? And so naturally there must be a winner, right? So after all of this, we have to ask who actually won the Bone Wars. And when we go purely on numbers and tally the new species, it's actually Othniel who comes out on top. He ends up with around 80 brand new species, whereas Edward ends up with 56.
I mean, that's still pretty good going.
It is. There's a small margin between them. Some of Othniel's dinosaurs you'll know instantly. They include the Stegosaurus, the Triceratops.
Oh, he discovered that one. That's my favorite one.
It is my favorite. And also the Diplodocus.
Oh, okay. Some pretty iconic dinosaurs.
Exactly. Creatures that are up there amongst lunchbox royalty.
Yes.
But here's the thing. The reason Othniel's dinosaurs are iconic and Edward's aren't, and I've looked at Edward's list, I wouldn't recognize a single one of them. And it's because it all comes down to resources. Othniel had government funding, right? He had museum backing, the full weight of the Peabody fortune pushing all of his work into the spotlight. Edward never had any of that. But also, comparing them isn't really that fair. Edward had a far broader interest than Othniel. Edward literally chased everything and anything, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, you name it. Whereas Othniel, he focused mostly on reptiles and mammals. So they weren't always looking for the same thing. So of course, when you compare dinosaurs, the guy physically specializing in dinosaurs is always going to be the clear winner.
Yeah. But then is it because Othniel's dinosaurs are those that they've gone on lunchboxes in Jurassic Park and whatever it is? Is it just no one's picked up Edward's dinosaurs because they're just No one's done that yet.
Exactly, they haven't. Othniel, because of his name, they get pushed up, they get made more prominent.
Sure.
And also, he was the head of the museum at Yale, probably one of the most notable museums in the country at the time.
So it's not that Edward's discoveries were any less then. It just didn't get the notoriety.
Exactly, yeah. So I wouldn't really recognize any of the dinosaurs that he discovered out of the 56, really. Maybe like a dinosaur buff would. But you know what? Stick to the basics. Triceratops, Stegosaurus, T-Rex. That's it. Pterodactyl.
What about a Diplodocus?
Diplodocus, sorry. Yes, exactly. But in 1897, Edward dies at the age of 56, so he's not old. In his will, he insists on having no grave at all. Instead, he donates his body to science, and even today, his bones are kept in a locked drawer for anatomy students to study, which is noble as a scientist giving back to science in a scientific way. But actually, the real reason he does this is because he wants his remains to be placed alongside his mentor, Joseph Leidy, at the University of Pennsylvania. So a totally normal, healthy student-professor relationship going on there.
Oh, because the other professor's bones are, even though that he had also discredited Edward in the past.
Yeah.
So he wanted his dead bones to be next to this guy.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I guess he probably ended up seeing this as like a lesson that Leidy wanted to teach him for like not doing science properly.
Sure, but what about his cousin wife?
Exactly. What about his family? No, he wants to be buried in the university with a creepy, bloody Joseph Leidy professor.
This is what happens when you obsess over fossils.
But also, in his will, he leaves Othniel one final challenge. Edward has his skull preserved so that his brain could be measured after Othniel dies, hoping that it would prove that his was bigger.
Oh, God. And?
Apparently, at the time, people believed that brain size correlated with intelligence. So this ends up being the most ridiculous pissing contest imaginable. Classic male behavior, but also completely pointless. Because, of course, it doesn't correlate to intelligence in any way.
If anything, it correlates to a lack of intelligence.
Or just that they're men. This is how we like our feuds. Of course, for the winner to be established, Othniel has to die first, which is stupid because neither of them will actually get to see the results anyway.
Yeah, but who does have the biggest brain?
He never accepts the challenge. Eventually, in 1899, so just a couple years after Edward, Othniel dies at the age of 67. And it's not because he is matured or he's understood the error of his ways or how pointless this all was. It's because this was his final chance to snub Edward one last time by refusing outright.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not because he feared that maybe that he would lose?
No, he was just like, yeah, I'm not rising up to it. But really, he's using it as a way of getting back at him.
It seems like he's afraid of the size of his brain.
Possibly. And so, Adam, with Othniel's death, the feud is finally ended. Apparently, Edward's skull is still preserved at the University of Pennsylvania today, but there is speculation it might not even be his, because at some point during the 20th century, they lose track of it. And when it finally turns up again, some argue that the written descriptions of the skull don't actually match the actual skull itself.
Oh, really?
Some experts, obviously, they insist that it is his, but others say absolutely not. No way.
Do you reckon it just got mixed up with a load of other skeletons?
Probably, I would say so. Like, it's a hard job keeping track of one skull over 150 years.
And equally, like a lot of skeletons, they look the same.
They do, yeah. So what they're relying on are these like written descriptions of the skull, like, oh, inside here on the left-hand side of the cranium, and there's this little bump here.
It looks like Edward.
He's got the same smile.
Yeah.
But despite the chaos, there is some positivity that came out of the Bone Wars. I remember we got Stegosaurus, Triceratops, objectively the best dinosaurs. And at the height of the Bone Rush, Edward and Othniel, they were literally celebrities. Newspapers followed them around from dig site to dig site like Victorian paparazzi. Sorry, Gilded Age paparazzi.
American Victorians.
Yeah. They pioneered that public fascination that ended up lasting like 150 years later. It's crazy. And honestly, it's thanks to them that dinosaurs are still part of our cultural bloodstream today, right? Like, can you imagine growing up in the 90s without dinosaurs? What would we be doing? Like, no dinosaur toys, no dinosaur books, no Jurassic Park, Adam.
God, yeah.
Like, Steven Spielberg might not even be the household name he is today.
And he made sharks. Not sharks.
Jaws?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, he's made E.T.
Yeah.
But that's just a mere story against the epic that is Jurassic Park, in my opinion.
But what was if it was Edward discovered the Triceratops and stuff like that? What would the Power Rangers look like then?
That's true, actually.
Like, and just Jurassic Park might be about a whole bunch of other different dinosaurs
Yeah.
that we don't even know about.
It could be, yeah. Like, the landscape could be very different. But the damage they did was also enormous too. Like paleontologists today, they're still correcting some of the mistakes that they made. Many of their papers are still being reanalyzed, and they are definitely skeletons sitting in museums right now containing foreign bones or bones in the wrong order or from different species altogether.
To be honest, how sure can we be about dinosaurs? In terms of, not that they didn't exist, but more in terms of what they looked like. We can assume the color of their skin. But like you said at the beginning, like with if the Tyrannosaurus Rex is now potentially different or slightly different body shape, we could still be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of dinosaurs are now discovering that they didn't just have skin. They actually had feathers. A lot of them would have been really feathery. There's even speculation that T-Rex himself had a bunch of feathers.
Exactly. We've been lied to this whole time.
I don't think we've necessarily been lied to.
We've been lied to.
We're piecing the puzzle pieces together. But you've got these instances where these scientists or these paleontologists, they're so proud, they don't want to admit that they were wrong with certain things, that they either keep these things from being corrected for a long, long time, or they just don't surface it.
It's like Phoebe in Friends when she's saying gravity could exist, but it's not so much like she's being pulled down, but more like forced down.
Pushed down.
Pushed down. So this is the thing. Until someone discovers something else, this is just what we've got to believe in.
That's true, yeah. And as Phoebe said again in Friends, like, Ross, are you so narrow-minded that you can even be open-minded enough, or even for a second, to consider the possibility that blah, 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 blah. And Ross is, I guess. It's just, wow, Russ. Before, like, I disagreed with you, but at least I respected you. You just let go of all of your beliefs. What will you tell the other scientists? And Ross just storms out. I love Ross.
Yeah.
But to be fair, then of course you've got everything that they did destroy as well. In my opinion, unforgivable, because there could have been something really valuable in that.
That's true. That's the crime, I guess, in terms of, have we missed out on something?
There is a silver lining. After they died, they left behind dozens and dozens of unopened crates that have never been catalogued, like just stacked with bones from these dig sites. So there is this strange silver lining, like I said, that out of all that destruction, there might be something really unique waiting to be discovered inside those crates. I'm sure they've all opened them up now, but that's crazy that they died leaving all this stuff behind. And it's for no other reason than they just did not have time to go through it all, because they were just so prolific, and it was all driven by this feud to one-up each other.
Yeah, just look at your bones. You might have found something new.
Yeah, exactly. And Adam, that is the story of the Bone Wars.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
You didn't even know it existed, but hey, you have the Bone Wars to thank for Triceratops, your favorite dinosaur.
Yeah, and the fact that people did fight over this during the time, but I guess it was such a new big thing. You wanted your name out there. You wanted to be the next Albert Einstein, right? Or something.
Yeah, I think the Victorian times, the Gilded Age of America, Victorian Americans, it was all about new frontiers, right? And discovering new things. They had the gold rush. They were heading out west. They were doing all these really crazy things. And everyone wanted a legacy and to be associated with something really great. And we don't really have that anymore because pretty much everything has been discovered. The last frontiers people say are space, but space is pretty boring.
What about the sea? They say that we haven't, there's a lot more in the sea that we haven't discovered. Could be some more dinosaurs down there.
Oh, yeah. But also, a lot of these dinosaurs they discover on land, they came from the seas. Just with the tectonic plates moving, they end up on land.
Yeah. That was a good little trip into history there, Kyle. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Should we run the outro for this week?
Let's do it.
And so that brings us to the end of another fascinating foray into the compendium, an assembly of fascinating things. We hope you enjoyed the ride as much as we did.
And if today's episode sparked your curiosity, then please do us a favor and follow us on your favorite podcast app. It truly makes a world of difference and helps more people like you discover the show.
For our dedicated freaks out there, don't forget that next week's episode is already waiting for you on our Patreon. And as always, it is completely free to access.
And if you want even more, then join our Certified Freaks tier to unlock the entire archive, delve into exclusive content, and get a sneak peek at what's coming next. We'd love for you to be part of our growing community.
We always drop new episodes every Tuesday, and until then, remember, even dinosaurs went extinct with more dignity than Cope and Marsh managed. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Did you know Microsoft has officially ended support for Windows 10? Upgrade to Windows 11 with an LG Gram laptop. Voted PC Mag's Reader's Choice Top Laptop Brand for 2025. Thin and ultra lightweight, the LG Gram keeps you productive anywhere. And Windows 11 gives you access to free security updates and ongoing feature upgrades. Visit lgusa.com/iHeart for great seasonal savings on LG Gram laptops with Windows 11. PC Mag Reader's Choice used with permission. All rights reserved.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening. Happy holidays! Want to give your host a gift? Consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing the show this holiday season. It really helps the show grow. From all of us at Believe, have a Merry Christmas, everyone, and a Happy Holiday.